chilling Skinwalker-inspired stories rooted in the eerie landscapes of New Mexico, Arizona, Nevada, and Utah. These tales echo the unsettling found on Reddit as those shared by people recounting terrifying encounters near Native American reservations. Brace yourself, these might just keep you up at night. I was driving late at night near the outskirts of the Navajo Nation when I noticed a coyote standing on the side of the road. Its eyes didn't glow like an animal's should in my headlights. They were human. I slowed down, trying to convince myself it was just a trick of the light. But as I drove by, it stood up on two legs and ran alongside my car. I floored it, but it followed me for miles, its hollow laughter echoing through the desert air. When I finally reached the safety of a gas station, I noticed claw marks down the side of my car. A group of friends and I rented a cabin in a remote area for a weekend getaway. On the first night, we heard knocking on the windows. It wasn't until the third knock that we realized the windows were 10 feet off the ground. Looking outside, we saw a figure crouched unnaturally low. When my friend yelled, "Who's there?" We stayed awake until sunrise, but the thing didn't leave until the sky brightened. The next morning, we found huge, clawed footprints circling the cabin. I was hiking alone in the red canyons of Utah near dusk when I started to feel like I was being watched. Then I saw it. A tall, shadowy figure that blended almost perfectly with the rocks. It followed me for an hour, staying just out of reach. When I shouted for it to leave me alone, it whistled, a sharp, piercing sound that didn't seem human or animal. By the time I made it back to my car, I was shaking. I'm a trucker, and I was driving through a desolate stretch of Nevada when I saw a goat standing right in the middle of the road. Its legs looked too long, and its face was wrong, like someone had taken a human face and stretched it over a goat's skull. I honked, but it didn't move. Instead, it turned to look at me and mouthed, "Turn back." I don't remember the next few minutes. Somehow, I ended up parked on the side of the road, hours behind schedule, with no memory of how I got there. During monsoon season, I was visiting my uncle on his farm near the Navajo Nation. It was pouring rain, and we were sitting on the porch when we saw someone or something walking through the storm. It didn't seem bothered by the downpour, and moved unnaturally fast. As it got closer, we realized its limbs were too long, and its eyes reflected the light like an animal's. My uncle muttered a prayer and told me to go inside. Later, we found deep, humanoid footprints in the mud, leading straight to the porch, but stopping abruptly. I grew up near a reservation, and one of the rules we were always told was never to whistle at night. I didn't believe it until one evening when I was walking home. The desert was silent, and on a whim I whistled a short tune. Almost instantly a reply came from the shadows, a high-pitched whistle mimicking mine. I started running, but the whistling followed, echoing all around me. When I finally reached my house, my dog was cowering under the bed, growling at the door. I never whistled at night again. I was camping with friends near a reservation in Utah when we heard crying in the distance. It sounded like a woman, but something about it was wrong. It kept getting closer, so we decided to check it out. What we found was a figure hunched over near the edge of the trees. The figure stood up. It was much taller than we thought, and turned to face us. Its face was blank, like a mask. We ran back to our tents, but the crying continued all night. I was at a rest stop just outside Reno, taking a break from a long drive. The place was completely deserted. As I got back into my truck, I heard someone call my name. It was my brother's voice, but he was 300 miles away. I looked around and saw a figure standing at the edge of the parking lot, waving at me. It looked like my brother, but its smile was too wide and its movements were jerky, like a bad puppet. I drove off immediately. When I called my brother later, he said he had a nightmare that something was trying to take his face. A rancher on the outskirts of a reservation was out checking on his livestock when he saw a coyote standing too close to his fence. Oddly, it didn't run when he approached. Instead, it turned its head and smiled, its face contorting into a grotesque, human-like grin. Paralyzed with fear, he stumbled back, only to hear it whisper his name in his late father's voice. When he turned to run, it stood upright, watching him with hollow eyes that burned in the night. He never left his house after sundown again. A group of friends camping near a reservation had just settled around the campfire when they noticed something moving in the trees. Thinking it was an animal, they ignored it until it started mimicking their laughter, one by one. When one of them went to investigate, the laughter turned into guttural growls. Suddenly, a tall, gaunt figure with a distorted human face emerged from the shadows. It said, "You're not welcome here," in a voice that echoed like the wind. They packed up and left, but the low growls followed them all the way back to the highway. I was driving through a desolate stretch of Nevada late at night when I saw a figure standing on a ridge. At first it looked like a deer, until it stood up on two legs. As I slowed down, its head turned toward me, revealing a face that was part human, part animal. It started running alongside my car, keeping pace even when I hit 70 miles per hour. When I finally lost sight of it, my headlights flickered, and I swore I could hear its distorted voice echoing from the surrounding darkness. "Come back." Growing up on a reservation, we were told never to whistle at night. My cousin didn't listen. One evening, he whistled outside our house, and within minutes, the wind picked up, carrying what sounded like screams. I'll never forget the look on his face when we saw a figure, half man, half beast, lurking at the edge of the yard. Its limbs were twisted, its mouth unnaturally wide. It whispered something we couldn't understand, but it didn't leave until my grandmother came out and burned sage. My cousin has never whistled again. Driving through Utah at night, I picked up what I thought was a hitchhiker. The man sat in the passenger seat, silent, except for occasional humming. When I looked over, I noticed his reflection in the window didn't match his movements. His real body was perfectly still, but the reflection grinned at me. I slammed the brakes and he was gone. My seatbelt was unbuckled, and there were claw marks on the dashboard. Staying in a trailer near a reservation, I was awoken by knocking on the walls. At first I thought it was the wind, but it was rhythmic. 3 knocks. Pause. 3 knocks. When I finally gathered the courage to look outside, I saw a figure crouched next to the trailer. It was too large to be human, its limbs impossibly long. It was dragging its nails along the metal as it whispered, "Let me in." I didn't sleep that night, and the next morning I found deep scratches covering the trailer. While hiking in a canyon near a reservation, I noticed strange markings on the rocks, symbols I didn't recognize. That night, I camped out under the stars, only to wake up to the sound of rocks shifting. In the dim light of the moon, I saw a figure standing at the edge of my campsite. Its body was human-like, but its head was that of a wolf, its eyes glowing unnaturally bright. It growled low and said, "Leave this place." I packed up and ran, hearing the sound of rocks falling behind me as it followed until I reached my car. While driving through a reservation late one night, I saw a coyote standing in the middle of the road. I honked, but it didn't move. Instead, it turned to look at me with glowing eyes and howled. When I looked in my rearview mirror, the coyote was running after me, its body shifting into a grotesque humanoid shape. I didn't stop driving until the sun came up. When I checked my truck at the next stop, there were handprints, human ones, streaked across the back.